the pull to run, trauma amnesia, and the urge to escape without knowing why. Welcome back. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11-time published author, and this is Occult Bloodlines, Families of Ritual Power. Today we're exposing a psychological and spiritual phenomenon that keeps thousands of survivors trapped inside families that are actively harming them. This is the experience of feeling an overwhelming urge to leave, to run, to disappear, to vanish entirely from your current life, yet not having a clear reason why. You question yourself, you hesitate, and you stay, until it happens again, and again, and again. If you've ever had the feeling, I don't know what's going on, but I need to get away from these people, or my entire life needs to change, but I can't explain why, you are not overreacting. You are not mentally unstable. You are experiencing a natural response to chronic trauma that has been hidden from your conscious mind, sometimes deliberately. In ritual and spiritually abusive families, there is a pattern of guilt-based programming that keeps victims attached to systems that hurt them. It doesn't rely on logic. It doesn't even rely on memory. It relies on emotion. The system counts on your kindness, on your hesitation, on your belief that family means something. But the truth is, many of us are kept tethered to people we should have fled from years ago because we don't remember what they did. This is trauma amnesia. It's not a rare or exotic disorder. It's a protective mechanism the brain uses to keep you functioning. When a trauma is too overwhelming to process in real time, especially if it's inflicted by someone you love or depend on, your mind fragments the event. It files it away. And when another trauma happens later, years apart, you experience it as a new wound, not a repetition of the same cycle. In spiritual families, this is used strategically. You are traumatized, then emotionally love-bombed. You're attacked, then told you imagined it. And because the events are spaced out, 5 years here, 2 years there, you forget. You tell yourself, they're not always like this. You remember the apology, not the violation. You cling to the good times, not the pattern. This is how ritual cycles are preserved through selective memory. But your body remembers, and your soul remembers. That's why, even when everything on the surface seems fine, you may feel a pull in your gut, an unshakable urge to leave, run, escape. It's not paranoia. It's your energetic field signaling that you are in danger, even if your conscious memory has no proof. The pull is your warning system. It's the message that the amnesia is covering something deeper. Here's how the pattern usually works. You begin to sense that something is off. You feel exhausted, sick, or anxious. A holiday is coming, or a family event is on the calendar, and suddenly you feel dread. You try to rationalize it. They're just difficult. I'm overreacting. But somewhere inside, you know the truth. And just as you start to plan distance, maybe you consider skipping the event, changing your number, or cutting contact, the guilt arrives. They call, they cry, they tell you you're being selfish. They remind you of how much they've done for you. Or worse, they pretend nothing is wrong, acting overly sweet to confuse your nervous system. This is not accidental. It is a system of emotional override, a spiritual hijack of your intuition. The pull to run is met with a wall of guilt. And for many survivors, that wall is too thick to get past. So they stay. Until the next attack happens, and the cycle repeats. Let's look at a few signs that trauma amnesia is at work. You feel panicked at the idea of spending time with family, but you can't name a specific reason. You remember 1 or 2 bad times, but they feel foggy, disconnected, or minimized. You've told yourself it wasn't that bad. Even though your physical or emotional symptoms say otherwise, you feel a strong desire to escape, leave the city, change your name, go no contact, but feel guilty for even thinking about it. When you try to talk about your childhood or past trauma, your mind goes blank, your throat closes, or you feel disoriented. You've been called dramatic, too sensitive, or unstable when you've tried to name your experience. One of the biggest gaslighting tactics in occult families is the strategic separation of events. They don't abuse you every day. They do it in time cycles, often around ritual dates, birthdays, or breakthrough moments. The idea is to keep you confused about what actually happened. If something traumatic happened 5 years ago and wasn't discussed, and then another attack happens 5 years later, you experience the second event as isolated. But it's not. It's step 2 in a 10-step ritual. This is how survivors are kept in place, not by force, but by fragmentation. You're constantly re-experiencing betrayal, pain, fear, and spiritual disorientation. But your conscious mind has been programmed to forget, minimize, or reinterpret it. And because the family appears functional, maybe religious, maybe professional, maybe even admired by others, you start to question yourself instead of them. So how does the guilt function in this system? It tells you that leaving is betrayal. It tells you that your feelings aren't enough to justify distance. It tells you that others have had it worse, so you should be grateful. It tells you that no one will believe you, so silence is safer. It tells you that you're imagining things. It tells you that they're trying, and that should be enough. This is spiritual gaslighting, and it is one of the most powerful tools used in occult families to protect the system from collapse. If you leave, they lose energy. If you speak, they risk exposure. If you heal, the ritual bond breaks. So every time you try to move, they activate the guilt grid. You might think, but why now? Why is the pull to run stronger this year than ever before? Because your nervous system can only handle so many repetitions before it breaks the loop. For many survivors, it takes multiple cycles, abuse, confusion, guilt, forgiveness, repeat, before the body and soul say, enough. That pull is not weakness. It is awakening. Let's summarize what we've covered. Many survivors of occult families feel a strong urge to flee without knowing why. This is often due to trauma amnesia, where spaced-out events are not remembered as a pattern. The family uses emotional guilt, praise, and love bombing to override your intuition. The urge to leave is a spiritual message that your field is under pressure or spiritual surveillance. Abuse cycles are maintained through time gaps, emotional confusion, and the illusion of reconciliation. Guilt is used as a leash, to keep you close enough to be useful, but not free enough to think clearly. Healing begins when you trust the pull, even if you can't fully explain the past. The absence of memory doesn't mean the trauma didn't happen. It means your system protected you long enough to survive. If you're feeling that pull now, don't ignore it. Even if you have no memory, even if nothing bad has happened lately, even if the last time was years ago, your soul knows the truth your mind was trained to forget. And honoring that instinct may be the very first sacred act of liberation you've ever made. Hi, I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and what you just watched is part of my signature program, the Chosen One series inside School of Soul. This series is not just a course, it's a blueprint for those who know they were different from the start. The black sheep, the scapegoat, the truth teller, the cycle breaker. Inside, you'll discover the family roles playbook, the golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the lost child, and how to finally step out of the part you were cast in without consent. How the black sheep becomes the goat, turning rejection into radical transformation in leadership. How to break generational curses and rewrite ancestral contracts so the pain stops with you. And how to recognize and escape modern forms of spiritual and technological targeting, from gang stalking to synthetic synchronicity. This isn't just about survival. It's about awakening, about reclaiming your voice, your lineage, and your destiny as one of the chosen ones. Click the link below to access the full series now, because the role ends the moment you decide it does, and the real script begins with you.